Let me just adjust myself here. All right, let's go to our next question. I hate the destruction COVID caused, but I love the freedom shelter in place lent me in terms of staying at home for 18 months. My job is now fully remote, and all of my friends have moved out of the city. I order my groceries online, and anything else I need is delivered. I am starting to feel anxious if I ever need to go out, but I never need to go out anyway. Should I be forcing myself out of the house, or am I okay to hunker down? All right. I think a lot of us have some part of ourselves that feels a degree of relief. Just without having the social pressure that we had prior to COVID. If people had social pressure, I think most of us did. And COVID has really, not COVID, it's really shelter in place has really caused us to reconsider how much do we want to be socializing? How much do we want to be leaving the house? Do we want to be working from home, or do we want to be working from an office? And really, considering what, considering how we want to be engaging with the world. And that shelter in place gave us permission to have sort of a back to the drawing board effect. In answer to this question, should I be forcing myself out of the house, or am I okay to hunker down? I think you should be getting out of the house a bit. Yes. And here's why. When you stay inside only, even if you like it, and you're there and you're inside, you're not socializing, you're not engaging even at all. When you need to in the future, it's going to be extraordinarily difficult and anxiety provoking. So I think that going out periodically is actually a gift to your future self, because you will have to go out eventually, whether it's to a meeting, whether it's to see a friend, whether it's to, get something that you can't get online. Eventually you're going to have to get out. And if you haven't left the house in days, weeks, or even months, it is going to be brutal. And here's why. So we have our minds, our bodies, and our spirits. They respond to something called habituation. So we get habituated to certain elements of life. We get habituated to our habits. So if we have breakfast every single morning at 8 a.m. for a week, our body will naturally be hungry at 8 a.m. If we go to sleep every night at 10 p.m., we will start to feel, and wake up at 7, we will start to feel fatigued around 10 a.m. Our bodies get accustomed and habituated to whatever patterns or routines we have set. And therefore, if we only stay in the house, if we don't socialize with others, if we don't ever leave, our body's going to adjust to that as the norm and have a lot of difficulty taking that step and trying something new. Even though we did it for a long time, we haven't gone out for maybe days, weeks, or months, even days, your body will begin to become habituated to that. So let's talk a little bit about why, and this gets a teeny bit sciencey, but just bear with me. I'll try to make it relevant and interesting to you. So we just have, this is such like behaviorism 101. You have yourself, and then you have your conditioned stimulus. Okay, so let's say you have yourself, and then you have a snake. So you are you, this is the snake, and you feel afraid. This is conditioned because you have a fear response to it. So we call that a conditioned stimulus. You then have an unconditioned stimulus where you might have neutrality, or you might have a joyful response to it. So maybe that's listening to your favorite podcast. You look forward to it. It's kind of neutral. You might even have some joy when you're doing it. So we'd call that an unconditioned stimulus. So something relatively neutral. And then you have an unconditioned response. So you have your snake and your conditioned response. You then have your podcast and you have your unconditioned response. So when you pair your unconditioned stimulus with your conditioned stimulus, you have your unconditioned response. So let's say, this is a little, let's just use the example of going outside. So you have going out to the grocery store, I'm afraid, your conditioned response. You have listening to your podcast, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling neutral. This is your unconditioned response. What do you think happens when you start playing your podcast as you go to the grocery store? You begin to have a more positive affiliation with the thing that you're fearing. And then after you do that for a week, so you say to yourself, you know what? I don't really want to go out. I'm not really into this. But let me just listen to my favorite song. Let me just listen to my favorite podcast. And I'm just going to walk to the grocery store. So you're doing something that brings you joy with something that makes you fearful. And now going to the grocery store isn't so difficult. Eventually, your body will become habituated, will become normalized to leaving the house, to going to the grocery store, and you can just go without listening to your podcast. This is a very simplistic way of understanding exposure therapy. So you're basically exposing yourself to something that your body isn't used to, or you've become sort of resistant to, and you're pairing it with something that you find joyful and fulfilling as a way to reduce your fear and increase your joy with the thing that you're wanting to do more of. So in answer to Angie's question, I think it's okay to not want to go out as much as you did before COVID, but really resist the urge to fully stay in the house and try to get out just a little bit so you don't become incredibly fearful of leaving and it doesn't become an anxiety provoking experience.